Hey guys, Josh Koerner here. Hope you've been having a great day today. I have been really looking forward to starting to expand my Sony full-frame E-mount line of lenses. I started out with just the Tamron 2875. This is a fantastic lens, but Sony's actually running a pretty good sale right now, and I was able to get 50 bucks off this 50 f1.8. And so you can find an affiliate link for this lens, as well as the rest of the gear that I used to make this video, in the description. I have had a thing for 50mm lenses for quite a long time. I had the Mark II version of Canon's Nifty 50, and then that ended up dying and I got the STM version. So I've had two different Canon 50s. I have the Sigma 30 for APS-C, which is roughly a 50mm equivalent lens. I've used my Canon FD mount 50 f1.4 quite a bit on my mirrorless cameras. 50mm is a great focal length. It's one that I've been kind of in love with for a while. It feels very honest and natural to me, and it's one that I really enjoy taking portraits with, but where bokeh can be really difficult. And I've really enjoyed the bokeh rendition out of this camera. It feels really smooth. If that's something you're into, it's really important, and I feel like this checks my boxes for bokeh. Now, a lot of people have talked about autofocus issues with this lens. That's one of the big hurdles that I had for getting into it in the first place. And before we get into some of those autofocus tests, please go ahead and motor drive all over that like button, or let me know what you're thinking about this video in the comments down below, or this lens. So one of the things that I realized pretty quickly, I did some back-to-back tests with the Tamron at 50, and you can really notice a difference in the bokeh with close focusing, and you can also notice a difference in close focus distance. So close focus distance on the 50 f1.8 is pretty far by comparison to the Tamron, which makes this a much more useful, practical option for daily shooting. That being said, one of the things that I found I didn't think was pretty significant at all was the autofocus performance. I felt like it was pretty run-of-the-mill. It wasn't fantastic, but it did all right, and really that's what I need. I've recorded a couple of videos in this studio space already on it, and you might have noticed, you might not have done, and I didn't feel like I was ever out of focus. I felt like it locked onto me really well, and when I was doing some walking tests and all that, felt like it really only had issues once I left the light source and kind of got into the shade, and so the exposure on my face radically changed, and it had to change the way that it was reading the autofocus to be able to catch up. So that's not a lens issue, that's a camera issue. I don't think it's a really significant camera issue either, but that's neither here nor there. What is both here and there is that it's a very sticky, this camera, the Sony a7 III, is very sticky autofocus. So you have to really push whatever's in focus all the way out of frame to be able to get the focus to track to a different location. What that means is that it will artificially make it look like the lens is slow or bad at focusing. That's the autofocus module in the camera being really sticky to subjects even once they're hidden behind other objects. And that's a really nice thing, but it doesn't do for fantastic autofocus tests, which is a bit of a chore, a bit of a pain to have to explain every time because the camera's good enough to force that explanation. Now, on the flip side, one of the things that did bother me is it's a very tappy lens. It feels like it's working real hard to move the elements around. The Tamron is a very quick, very snappy autofocus operation. It feels like they probably have like 2 linear autofocus motors in here because it's just immediate. Now, the 50 STM lens from Canon, this was made for video. The STM motors from Canon are made for smooth focusing in video, and it's not very quick. I feel like I would equate the autofocus speed on the Canon 50 f1.8 and the Sony 50 f1.8. Now, this is a lot quieter and smoother than the Sony, and that's fine because it works on the Sony, and I have a lav mic, so I don't have to worry about it being picked up when I'm recording video, which is kind of nice. Now, in terms of stills performance, what I've found so far is that it feels very much like I have to push the shutter speed a little bit further and lock down the steady shot to 50mm to get a really solid image. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like it feels like it doesn't resolve enough, and maybe I just need to do a couple of side-by-sides, but it doesn't feel like it resolves as much as the Tamron, which is a little bit interesting because it's a prime and it should be much better optical quality. Interestingly enough, it is actually better optical quality than the Canon 50 f1.8. The Canon can resolve 25, 26 megapixels on the 50 megapixel 5D SR. Now the Sony can do 29 on the 42 megapixel A7R2, which means that it can resolve about 60, 61, 62% of the focal plane, whereas this can only do between like 50 and 52% of the focal plane, which means that that's the sharper lens. And interestingly enough, this lens is recommended to be shot at f2.8 to get the best sharpness. The Sony is actually recommended to be shot at f1.8 for best performance overall. So I'm gonna do some more tests soon and you know, kind of stop it down and see where we get with that. So yeah, that's mostly what I have for this video. Do check out those affiliate links in the description if you're interested in the gear that I used to make this video or in this lens. Don't forget to motor drive all over that like button and subscribe. I'm gonna be making a couple of videos soon comparing in the field the Sony 50 f1.8, the Canon 50 f1.8 on the A7 III, and maybe 50mm on the Tamron. I've also thought about doing the Sigma 30 f1.4 because it's a roughly equivalent focal length, and just kind of having fun with a nice big comparison like that, and maybe break that up, whatever. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that subject. So yeah, thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.